Gunningamerz here. Today we're going to be starting out part 2 with our new PC build. Part 1 we took the parts from my old case, my old parts, 2-year-old parts, and swapped them into the new Coolmaster 922 case. So today I've finally got all my new hardware in stock. Some of this stuff I started buying back in October, and I've tested whatever's come in to make sure it was good, which is normally the biggest reason why you wouldn't want to gather hardware like that, but I really was out looking for the best deals on everything, and I wasn't in a really big hurry to build right away. So it's the first time I've actually done that. Usually I'll just put in one large order for every component, top to bottom, and build the PC in one day. But like I said, I was really shopping, and I was on the fence about the graphics card situation, and that has now been resolved, and I'll get to that here in just a minute. So just covering the different components of my new build, I'm going to be going with a G1 Sniper 5 motherboard, and that's by Gigabyte. This is a socket 1150. Basically it's got 10 SATA 6 GB ports. It also has 10 USB 3.0, which will be nice because I definitely use a lot of those with all my hard drives and all the different things that I plug in. Not so much USBs, but mainly the SATA ports. I really like that. I have to look into it. I think that there's 6 of them that are on the board, and then the other 4 SATA ports are on a third-party controller, and I really don't like to use those a whole lot, and I might not have to, but I know that 6 are already accounted for, and I'll probably be pushing that to 8 here in the future with adding more hard drives. There's 9 fan connectors. I won't be using really any of them. I think I might plug 2 of my fans in that are on the bottom of the case. They're not real important, but usually I like to plug all my fans in right to the direct power source. I don't know some of the other goodies that it's got here, but of course I use solid black caps and you know, just a little bit of this, that, and the other. It does have where you can, if you're running liquid cool, you can kind of hook it directly in to the board. I don't know what else. It's got the Bluetooth up here. I won't be using that either. But there's just some things on here that I don't use. But oh, the biggest thing, of course, is the built-in Creative Labs audio. You can't get any better than that. And it's got, you know, I don't know if there's a picture on here. Well, right here it's got the you know, gold-plated audio jacks, which, you know, some say is gimmicky, but some say that really does make a big difference. And it's a good thing to have, so why not? And you can also swap your op amps out on this board, which basically changes your audio depending on what you're doing. I kind of did a little reading up on this, and looks like, as far as my use in doing gaming, looks like the one that's standard in there right now is the one that I'm going to go with and keep in there. And they threw an additional one in, which is, I forget what it said. It was good with different orchestra music and this, that, and the other, and maybe somebody that's doing a lot of video editing or making might find one of those other op amps a better selection. But as far as that, again, that socket 1150. Here's our 1150. This is a Core i7 4770K. At this time, this is one of the better processors out by Intel. It is the best, to my knowledge, with the socket 1150, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want to go socket 2011. I heard that, you know, they're phasing that one out, and there's going to be, I can't remember what's going to be replacing it here soon. We've got a lot of miles left to go on the socket 1150 because it is something they just rolled out about, I guess it's been 9 months already. It was back in June of 2013. So a lot of miles left on this socket, and it was kind of a no-brainer. And I got this back in November and paid, what the heck was it, $278. And that's the cheapest for one day I've ever seen it on Amazon, and I've never been able to find it for that price again. So I really lucked out. It normally hovers around $320. The motherboard here, jumping back, was $286, and that one again is anywhere from $260 I've seen. Of course, that's with shipping, all the way up to $400 and a quarter, and it has a $100 rebate on it. So that'll help knock the overall price down to $285 once I get that. Now, to keep that processor cool, we're going to be going with a Corsair H80i. Now this is double the thickness as what we saw with our H60 last week in the other build, the one that I had before. This does use those double thick hoses. It's the I, which means I call it the smart pump, but it hooks up via USB, and you can control it from your windows as far as you know, how it pumps and how the fans run and a whole 9 yards. So that's what that Corsair link is, and this works with, you know, all the Intel and AMD stuff. Basically, it you know, it's a very good solution. If you can fit the H100i in, I would probably recommend doing that. Both of them have the same surface area of the radiator. This is double the thick of the H80i, but the H100i, but the H100 has the benefit that it's, you know, it's more spread out, and two fans blowing through a thinner radiator, it does get a little bit better cooling. So we're not going to be having those sort of issues. I'm planning on going, you know, for sure to 4 gigahertz overclock, and I might go up as high as like 4.2, probably not even to 4.4. I know you can, but you start getting into really having to tweak with voltages and things like that. And when you go with a smaller overclock, for instance, with my 2600K, I went from 3.4 to 4.0, and in 2 years it's been running, you know, very solid. So basically that's what we're going to use to cool that 4770K. To power the whole deal, we have, oh man, is this heavy, the Corsair RM1000 watt power supply. This also has the Corsair link, which I guess you can hook up, and I don't know what you can control in there, but one of the things, I haven't done my reading on it, is I know it has the ultra quiet mode, which basically until this thing is getting 40% load, that fan will not run. Once it's 40% load, the fan will turn on. That's why it's the ultra quiet. And I think you can go into the Corsair link and actually enable that to kick in earlier, I'm hoping, because I kind of don't, it doesn't bother me, and yeah, I like that it's quiet and it's obviously staying plenty cool, but I would definitely, seeing as that mine mounts at the top of the case, I'd like to use this fan to also pull some extra air out of the case. If it's not possible, it's not a big deal. Like I said, I haven't read up on it yet, but that's what that 0 RPM fan mode is, and low noise. This is an 80 plus gold at 93, it was 92 or 93% efficiency, so it's very good as far as not wasting too much power. And what are some other things about it here? Oh, of course it is modular, which is a big plus. So we've got all kinds of different cables in here, and you know, this would be good up to for SLI or Crossfire, at least one other card, but I'm not going to get into running that here, so not anytime soon. As far as storing all the data, we're going to be going with an ADATA 512 gigabyte solid state drive. Really not a lot to talk about with this. It's ultra slim, and it comes with the desktop pack, which is the bracket for a 3.5-inch bay. Really, it's pretty much it. So 512 gigabyte solid state. We're going to jump over to the RAM. We have got our 16 gigabytes. There's 2 sticks in here. 16 gigabytes of DDR3. It's the Corsair Vengeance, and it's the 2133 megahertz. So it's a little bit faster and should handle those overclocks very nicely. And I went with 2 sticks. Again, it's 2 8 gig sticks in there. Really, when it comes to overclocking, the fewest amount of sticks that you have, the better off that you are. And what are we forgetting here? Whoa, graphics card. So I spent so much money on my power supply, my you know, my water cooler, the motherboard, processor. I had to kind of go budget on my graphics card, and I picked up this really nice Sparkle GeForce 8400 GS. It's 512 megabytes of DDR3. I'm hoping that this thing will really tear up my games and bring you guys some nice videos. I don't know, you could leave a comment and let me know if you think that'll work or not. Okay, I really didn't go that route. So, as you all know, you've been maybe hearing some of my Euro trucks and my rants and raves as far as going with the what card, and at one point last fall I was dead set on getting that and jumping over to the AMD and did a lot of research, and I was waiting for them to come out, a Gigabyte to come out with their WindForce cooler on the 290X, which they did do. And at the end of the day, I had to make a decision what to go with, and I went purely on performance that we have right now, and I tried to factor in what we're going to all see in the future. And with DirectX, you know, we've got Mantle right now, but DirectX 12 is coming. It's supposed to be like a 50% less load on the CPU and all these other numbers, and anybody that's been out shopping for graphics cards right now knows how difficult it is to make a decision. And at the end of the day, the only thing I knew is I wanted a Gigabyte WindForce, because as you've seen in part 1, that's what my 580 is, and I absolutely love how quiet and how cool that thing is. So that's the only thing that I had going for me, and I had to make a decision. And my decision is, and what we picked up, is the 780 Ti overclock. And I did that made the decision purely out of the fact that this thing benchmarks higher in most games. Yes, it has the Nvidia physics. I don't turn that on in a lot of my games, like PlanetSide. I have it turned off. You know, a lot of it's to do with performance, but I don't like the glitter in that game. I kind of find it distracting. Maybe with better performance, you know, with the 780 Ti, I might try to turn it back on and see if I can get used to it. But I kind of like to keep things a little more simple looking in there. And but there's some big ones that are coming out. Where in the past, Mafia 2 was one of my favorite examples of physics. You know, you could go in and see all the beautification that game had. And as far as in the future, I pretty much am looking forward to Star Citizen, and they are going to use Nvidia physics. And so I thought, well, you know, that's a game you got to decide. They're going to use Mantle in there as well. So you want to use Mantle, or you want to use you want to get the physics and all the space junk that's floating around and some of the things. And I kind of like to see that game, or I'd like to have the ability to do that. And yes, you can still run an Nvidia card, I guess, with an AMD card, and use the Nvidia as for physics and that sort of thing. We won't get into all that. So it's you can run it from your CPU. You know, if you're using AMD, there's lots of different things out there, and that's why it's so confusing. And I don't think there's a clear solution for everybody. You really got to sit down and do your research and decide what you want. But with a lot of the simulators and things that I'm doing, you know, I really need raw horsepower, and that's what the 780 Ti is going to offer. And with DirectX 12 on the way, you know, I'm really banking on that it's going to be a good thing. And we don't have any idea what's going to happen with Mantle. It is supposed to be open for Nvidia. I do believe Nvidia will probably grab onto it. I know they will if it catches on. But DirectX 12 might not be a good thing for Mantle right now. But if it is, I do believe Nvidia, like I said, will pick it up, but they will probably they probably won't enable it except on their 800 you know, series cards and newer. I don't know. Maybe they'll go back and do some driver support for these 700 series, and we'll be seeing some of it there. But right now, the 780 Ti is a hell of a card, and of course it's got 3 gigabytes of GDDR5. Again, it's the overclocked version, and we'll have this out of the box here in a few minutes. There's really nothing in here besides the graphics card, the crappy installation disk that you don't want to use, and 2 ugly Molex to 8-pin GPU or PCI Express connectors rather that we don't use. Well, on the last one, I have made the decision, and you've probably seen this sitting here. Windows 8. I'm going to put it on. This is one of the first copies when it came out. Windows 8 has come a long way. There's still a lot of hate for it. It does work better with everything, though. I mean, it's faster with games. It's you need it if you want to use DirectX 11.2. That won't be coming out for Windows 7. I have a feeling, well, we know DirectX 12 is coming out, I think, at the end of this year. I'm pretty sure if it does make it out at the end of the year, it's going to be for Windows 8. If it's prolonged any longer, and Windows 9, which is supposedly just over a year away, we might not be able to even use DirectX 12 here. And if Windows 9 is a real bombshell, I'll probably switch to that in a year anyway. But at least for now, I want the better support in the solid state. I just want the better speeds, and I'm gonna go ahead and take it in the butt as far as the you know, just the way this thing looks and acts. You know, you got to go out, if you got the old Windows 8 like I do, you got to go out and get the 8.1 update, which, you know, is not that difficult. And then the next thing I got to do, and this is the reason why I'm going with it, is April 8th, which is about a week, 2 weeks away. They're going to have Update 1 come out, which ironically is the same day they're killing Windows XP support. So, which they're going to actually continue the security side of updates for Windows XP until July, I believe, for like another 90 days after they kill it. So we're going to go with Windows 8. That's the newest thing. I'm building a new PC. I want to put something new in there. I hope Update 1 next week, 2 weeks is really good, or else I'll be really pissed. And I've always got my copy of Windows 7 Pro. I can switch back pretty easy. I've installed Windows just a few times, a few thousand times. So other than that, that's the hardware we're looking at. And of course, let's see if we can grab it here. We've got our super light case that, I don't know if I'm in the shot there. Super light case now that we have nothing in it, and my old case, my 6-year-old case, you'll see it when it's all done, and you'll see the reason why I keep it. And I don't know if I showed this. This is the side panel. There used to be filters on here, and falling out of the shot there. There used to be filters on here, as well as these plastic crossbars and all kinds of garbage, and these actually went inside of the filter and the whole thing clipped in there. I tore all that out. I've cut all that. I always do that. I always get my fans as open as possible to keep from restricting airflow. But these are 4 140s, and it's one of the reasons I've held on to this case for so long. I used to have 4 120s in here, but I've gone to 4 140s. These are very quiet, and I have to say I do think they're quieter than the 200. Let's see if we can dig one of those up. This is the Coolmaster 200. These will move 2 times the amount of air that a 200 will. And, you know, you've got 4 140s. Two of these equals, you know, a 200, basically. Actually, they do, I think, a little bit more. I forget all the numbers, but I do know that you're moving double the air with this, and it's very quiet. That's why I've kept this case for so long, because I have a hard time finding something with a 400mm fan. I don't even know if they make them. I've looked before and I don't see it. If they did, I would even consider cutting the rest of this out and just mounting one big fan in there. But these 4 140s really do the trick. And the other thing that's nice when you go with the 140s like that, I got these two blowing air out and those two blowing air in. These will blow air in on the motherboard, the Northbridge heatsink, as well as the RAM and everything at the top there. There's really not a lot going on at the bottom of the motherboard except the South Bridge, which has got a heat pipe that runs up towards the North Bridge, so it's still getting cooled. And this board actually has got a fan up on the North Bridge as well. But you've got your graphics card, and when you run the graphics cards like I do, the WindForce, they actually exhaust the heat out towards the side of the case, and if you've got fans, you know, an inch away, you're actually blowing the heat back onto the card, and it's kind of got to get directed and go up. And that's what I'm running into with the 922. The temperatures are 6 degrees Celsius. I used to run, this is again with the 580, I would hit 60 would be the max. And that's an overclock card, so again, that's why I like these WindForce coolers. And now with the 922, I'm 6 degrees higher because I've got the 200mm fan kind of just blowing heat. And I don't want to flip that around because I know that the heat coming out of the graphics card, 66 degrees Celsius, is still very acceptable. And the heat, you know, it gets, they're kind of button heads, but eventually it's getting sucked up and exhausted out. I can feel it on the top fan. So we're still plenty good with the temperatures, but I want air blowing on the RAM modules because they do, you know, they do tend to get hot, and RAM is notorious for failing. So I always like to have some air blowing onto, you know, these heat spreaders, the heat sinks on my RAM modules, and that's why I got that 200 on the 922 blowing in right now, and I'm going to keep it that way. But at least with this, I have the choice that I can still blow air in on the top, and the heat that comes out of my graphics cards is sucked right out the bottom. And you know, you're probably always going to get some airflow that's going to circulate, but at the end of the day, there's just so many damn fans in my case. I'll lose count, 8, 9, 10 of them, something like that. There's so many fans blowing around in there that the air is just, and of course the back side of the case is just, you know, it's wide open. I think I've got more air pressure going in than I do coming out. I have to think about that for a minute, but yeah, I do believe, because I've got the 2 on the bottom, and I've got 2 on the front and 2 on, yeah, so I've got more air coming in than I do getting sucked out, which is good, because the things that are sucking out, like my H80i or my H60 right now, you know, I want there to be good air pressure there for those, so they're not choking on air. They're exhausting plenty of air, and everything in my case, even like I said with the 922, everything is running so cool. I mean, if you go the route that we did in part 1 with the 922, it's a highly recommended case. You're going to be fine, and if you've got an old guy like me that has this setup, you know, I never have a doubt or a worry that this case will do the job. But as I said in part 1, I'm going to be retiring this rig after this. These parts that go in will be staying in, and it'll spend 2 years as my main system, 2 years as my backup, and then 2 in and out the door, or it might stick around for 2 more years, because I got all these boys that are going to be wanting to get into games. Anyway, we're going to jump to start getting building so I can get back online and start gaming. So we're going to go ahead and unbox our motherboard. Not really a whole lot special inside of here. Let's go ahead and set the motherboard over here for a second. I give you a handful of good old SATA cables, and some of these are the 90-degree angle. Actually, let me see, there's 2 of them per pack, so yeah, they give us 6 of them, and 3 of them have 90-degree angle on the one end, so that's kind of nice. Crossfire, here's the Bluetooth card, not even going to put that in. Extra USB 3.0, we need that for our old case. Our old case needs that, so I'm going to actually, the motherboard 2 years ago came with the same thing, but I did not use it. Didn't really need it. Didn't have anything USB 3.0 2 years ago, and now I do. All my flash drives and things like that. Here's the Bluetooth antenna. Nothing too special. I'm going to throw that back in the box. This is that doohickey here for pulling the op amp off the board, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm not going to take mine off. I really don't have a reason to, but that's the little tool there for plucking it. It's like a fancy tweezers. And SLI stuff. Ooh. Gotta have that Gigabyte sticker. I have to put that in the 922. Since both of them are going to be using Gigabyte motherboard, graphics cards, and I know our Intel came with an i7 sticker, so I used to not even bother with those, but I do put them on now. Kind of like it. Got a book, installation. This one is for the Bluetooth. It looks like setting it up. I would never do that. I just like having my wire in there. I'd be paranoid about latency and lag and things like that. Got the book and a DVD with Intel 8 Gaming Series utilities. Just a bunch of junk on it I'm probably not going to really use. I don't usually use those discs because everything you can get from the website. Alright, here's our shield. Nice and black. Pretty sweet. And we've got our SLI. I don't know if I pointed that one out. We're not going to be using that either right now. So, got a few things we're going to be just kind of leaving here in the box. Let's go ahead and set this out of the way. Alright, here is the good stuff. That is it right there. There's that Soundcard 3D, the Sound Creative Labs there. Go ahead and set our board in place. And right now, if I went to made this cutout on my case here, I would have definitely had to, you know, put the water cooling pump on already, because Otherwise we'd have had a big problem there as far as getting to the bolts in the back. I am going to double check it. I'll throw a screw or two on here, and I am going to double check because I want to make darn sure that I have full access, because I think these are in the same spot on the motherboard as the 1150. I'm sorry, the 1155 is the 1150, but I want to make darn sure because we don't want to go on tightening everything down and then find out that we're not good to go. I've got 4 screws in the motherboard, so we're going to turn it over and look here. You can see my nice cutout here. We've got good access to all 4 of our screws there, so we can go ahead and mount that pump. Of course, first we've got to get that CPU put in, but since we've got 4 screws in each corner, that should be good enough, right? I mean, it's not like it's going to fall out. Wrong. If you see my part 2, you'll hear my rant about that, and why not to do that. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of our screws in and jump onto the CPU. Now we can go ahead and unbox our processor. It's amazing that so much goodness has to come in such a huge box. Let's see, we've got a book there. I don't actually know who reads that, but all I care about is maybe the sticker. And this is where you'll find the insanely crappy, super crappy little stock cooler. And this thing is paper thin. They used to be 2 to 3 times, you know, the size, like on the Q6600 back in 2008, 2009. They used to make them a whole lot thicker, and well, by 2009 they had already changed them to this super thin design. I think Intel pretty much knows this is good enough on this processor. If you leave it stock, it'll run a little bit warm, but you know, perfectly in the safe zone. But they know anybody that's overclocking is they're always throwing these things out, and whatever they can do to cut costs. It used to cost $500 for an Intel processor, and now, thank God, it only costs $300. I think my first one I paid about $5.50 for that Q6600 back in 2008 as a quad core. So we'll go ahead and we totally misplaced the thing we cared about. There is the little beauty right there. And I've actually already tested this. When the board came, I wanted to test the board, and this is the only 1150 that I have in stock, so that's why there's no thermal paste on here. Normally there would be, but I would never use that again otherwise, and have no reason to use it with the fact that I have a aftermarket air cooler in stock in case if I ever should have a pump issue. So we'll go ahead and put this in. Now I'm going to put my thermal paste on first. There's a lot of different ways that people do that as far as putting thermal paste on. There is a wrong way. There's several right ways. The wrong way is to put way too much, and I guess the other wrong way would be to not put enough, which I think is kind of hard to do because really the smallest of amount is more than good enough. But I have seen many times where I've taken off customers' heat sinks, and this entire portion of the CPU was just, it was just gobbed up. Like, I think they bought a tube like this and used half the thing on there until they had it stacked about 1 inch, and I've had it gooped all over the motherboard, and it's all smudged up underneath the capacitors, you know, all the way over the RAM module. I've seen people get it in the RAM modules, and so it's really just comes down to common sense. Now, one way that you'll see most people doing it, including all the big guys there on YouTube, and this works, and I've done this. I did this the other day when I popped the stock cooler on, is just to put a little pea-sized bead right in the middle and slap your cooler on there. However, I will say this, you know, right here is your processor, all these little chips in there. If you ever pried one of these apart, you'll find out that this is just a thick hunk of metal. And this thing's purpose is to be the conducting plate for the heat from the processor. Because they obviously, if they didn't have this, then you'd be applying some special things to the actual chip and then slapping this on. And of course, Intel and everybody else, AMD knows that us customers are not that precise and we'd ruin everything. So they give us this big hunk of metal. When you put the little pea-sized bead on there, one thing that you'll see is when you pop your heatsink off is a lot of times you'll have just a circle like that. I'm a little more picky about mine, and I actually like to put my thermal paste like a little bit of a zigzag, and I'll actually use my finger to paint it on there as if I'm doing you know, finger paints or something, and I'll pull it from the middle out like this. And I'll just keep pulling it until I have a beautiful, perfect, thin layer of thermal paste. So when I put my heatsink on, it's 100%, you know, has thermal paste on 100% of it. Perfect square will be on your heatsink if you were to pull it off, and there will be none spilled over onto the CPU. Now, if you have a little, that's fine. And once in a while, I'll get a little bit too much and have a little bit just kind of go over the edge, but it doesn't go over the edge of the CPU itself. And it really only takes a couple minutes, and you're going to get the best results. So again, most of them will take thermal paste, little pea-sized beads, smack it on. That's going to really be good enough. But if you're like me, I want it to be perfect, because I put this on and I really have no plans for at least 2 to 4 years to pull it off again. So we're going to be using, this is my favorite thermal paste. This was I think $8. I showed it in the last video. Sorry, got it off screen there. I got this in the last video there, and that's the Arctic Silver, and $8. I bought it a couple years ago. I know the shelf life is usually for a couple years, but you know, it's 22 grams in there, and I've done, literally, not even joking, at least several hundred processors, and it is only halfway. It's right there about between the M and the I. This stuff is insane, and I love the way that this spreads out. It spreads out the best. Now, as far as how good of a thermal paste it is, I think it's pretty good. But on my own stuff, I go out and I've been a fan of the OCC Freeze. It's $7 for this tube. It's the same price as this. This is 3 grams. This is 22. If you're doing PC business, this is very good, especially better than anything that comes from factory. But if you're going to build your PC, go with the good high end. This stuff is a lot harder to spread, but I've seen test results, and this stuff is really the real deal as far as you know, its thermal conductivity and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and just put some on. If I can get the cap off. I've already got it on my fingers. You got to get messy doing it. Just don't be touching all them gold pins there. This stuff comes out pretty easy, so bring it over here so you can see. I just kind of spread it around. That makes pulling it with my finger a lot easier. And this stuff here, it takes a while. It takes, with that Arctic Silver, I can pull it out with one stroke of my finger and have it perfect. This stuff here, you kind of got to just fool around with it for a few minutes. Almost like you got to kind of warm it up a little bit. It tends to stick to your finger far better than it wants to your processor here. It's not as easy to work with, but again, this is something that you're not going to be doing very often. Well, folks, there you have it. Went ahead and got the OCC Freeze on there. It's about 99.5% covered. It looks like I've got a pretty thick layer on there, but trust me, I really don't. I've worked with this stuff quite a bit, and it's just a thicker, I don't know how to explain it. It's just kind of a thicker paste, and you know, what you didn't see is the fact that I just spent 15 minutes just kind of spreading that out. But again, this is not something that I take apart very often, and this one may very well be in place for the next 4 years, unless if I switch out to an H100i, I would have to go to a different case. But we went ahead and got the stuff on there. I can do a very nice thin layer very quickly with something like this, and I was very tempted to go ahead and just use it with the Arctic Silver, but I've always used the OCZ Freeze on my own stuff, so decided we would stick with that. Let's go ahead and drop this baby in here. You got to be very careful. This is the one part that you really want to watch out what you're doing. You should have a triangle down in that corner, a triangle here, and you've got 2 notches on the intels, which will coincide with that up there. Once your CPU is in, you can pop this piece of plastic off, little protector, drop that gate down on there, and ever so gently put it in place. There we are. And they're nice and snug. Now we've got to move on to the next beast, and that is to go ahead and drop the H80i onto our board here. Let's have a look at what's inside this box of badness. And I also wanted to point out, don't ever throw this away, because if for some reason you ever have to take this board out, take your CPU out, these do come in handy, and you do want to keep them to replace so that none of your pins are being damaged or bent. Alright, so opening the H80i, we got papers flying everywhere. I got this up back in October, and I probably told you guys a story about having one that had a little bit of a bent neck on it, and then receiving the second one that the liquid was all over inside the bag, and it actually soaked through the box. It almost scared me away for good, but I know that there are so many of these, you know, coolers in use, and I didn't want that to deter me, because I've had great luck and great temperatures with the other coolers that I've had that aren't even as good as this. But you can see the H80i, how nice and thick that radiator. It's double the thickness of the H50 and H60, and the H100. So got a lot of nice deep fins there to blow all kinds of nice air through. Let's see if we can get a little bit of a view. So, and then we've got our smart pump here. As you can see, you know, they're always going to put on a nice little layer of thermal paste. And to be quite honest, it's good thermal paste, but why I don't like it is because that's more of an area than the processor right there, and that's going to spill over and kind of goop up on the edges. Again, that's not a big problem. I'm just a little bit picky about it, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off. And the way I recommend doing that whenever you work with thermal paste, well, we had an old paper towel, but you're just going to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel. Dry paper towel works fantastic too to get the paste off. And kind of wipe it around the edges to the inside. And once you get it off, then you come back with a clean towel and some alcohol. And whenever you're using alcohol around electronics, you know, rubbing alcohol, I always recommend going with the 91% or higher, or 90%. Some places sell 90, some are 92, 91. This is 91. Don't use the 70-30 crap. That's 70% alcohol and 30% water. And if for some reason you spill or you get some alcohol down in the circuitry, you want that stuff to dry very, very quickly. And the 70-30 stuff takes a little bit. It's really, that stuff's made for putting on wounds and whatnot, so it doesn't burn quite so bad. They got a great copper block here. I remember the days when you used to have to lap your CPU, you know, wet sand your block, wet sand your CPU. You know, I never did it to my own per se. I did it to a cooler, never a CPU. But I do know that they said back in the day that really used to help. And it seems like nowadays our engineering is so much more precise that we don't really have any, you know, as many voids, and they give us these nice copper, you know, blocks here to work with. So let's get this stuff moved out of the way. I sure do miss having my benches I had in Tennessee at our house there. But I'll actually have more room in my new office downstairs in this home once we get that completed. We're going to be running electrical here real soon. I'll have to get down and do a video of what's going on down there. We were down there, my dad and I, doing some plumbing yesterday. I need to just set that over there. Okay. We're missing our plate and all that sort of thing here too. One thing also I did, because I've hooked a number of these up, but you normally wouldn't want to, is just to keep the thermal paste off your CPU until you're actually really ready to put it on. Don't do it in the order I did, because there's going to be times you're going to want to be moving this around, kind of figuring out exactly where do you want it, and it's kind of nice just to semi-tighten it down a few times when you're trying to figure out how it's going to go. But I pretty much know, like I said, where we're going with it. So I've worked with it before, but if you guys remember in part 1 when I had the complaint about the 1155 board and the H60 with the thicker hoses hitting the RAM modules, you can see on the 1155 that there is a lot more room to work with. But on top of that, this is slot 1, slot 2, the green, slot 3, and slot 4. So unless if you had 4 sticks of RAM, you're not even using this black. And traditionally, it's always been 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. But this was always 1, and in this case, they flipped it around, which is really nice because now we have plenty of room for hoses and coolers and whatever else. And that used to be a big problem with the massive air cooling setups that we used to have. Forever and a day now. They've always been, bumping up against the RAM, and some of them had to sit so far off the board just to clear the RAM, and you had to go with a low-profile RAM stick, and you couldn't have stuff with heat spreader, and the list goes on. But thankfully, we're finally coming around here in 2014 and getting some better setups. Now, we've gone ahead and got our fans out. We've got 2 of them here for the H80, and H100 also would have 2. One thing that you'll find these H-series, getting bad reviews for, and there's a lot of idiots out there, and you'd like to just smack them in the forehead, but is that they have sent them back and complained that they've gotten sent the wrong fan cable, and that this cable, let me see if I can get in here closer, this cable right here does not plug into, to this, and a lot of people complaining. All you got to do, they put a plastic insert to protect those pins from getting bent. And there are a lot of people, amazingly enough, they're building their own PC, but they're not smart enough to figure that out. And I found that this thing, at least as of last year, was getting a lot of bad reviews because people were ticked off that they were getting the wrong fan cable. That's not the case at all. Pull the plastic insert off. So you got to remember to do that. But this is nice cable regardless. This is this splits. This goes to the pump. These go to the 2 fans. Everything is through the same setup. And we're going to just go ahead and get the H80 mounted up here. And you're going to see where I'm going to utilize my custom cut hole here to feed this through. And if all goes well, we're going to be good to go. Now I had to make a bigger cutout here than I originally had for the H60. I did that last year. When I first got this, I kind of sized it up, and I could see that, with these bigger hoses, I had to cut down a whole lot farther. So this will be my first time actually installing it in this case, and like I said, if all goes well, it'll be set up here in just a minute. A couple of quick pointers that I've learned with these Corsair coolers over the years now. Again, I bought their first H50 weeks after it had come out, and those were a real bear as far as installing, and took more time. They were the style of pump that you push down, and then you had to get it down so far, and then you turned it a quarter turn or whatnot, and then it clicked in and tightened up. I hated those because of the fact that you're essentially sticking a piece of copper on your processor with your thermal paste, and you're smearing it, and if you ever pulled one off, you'd seen the spiral in your thermal paste and it would be all over the edge. And so they still make those. I think that's the H110 model, and the H70 I think is that way. Or they made them as of 6 months ago. I don't know what they've still got, but I do not recommend those. I think Coolmaster actually makes some of theirs that way. It's the biggest reason why I really like the Corsair, because these you just bump the camera there. These you just go ahead and you put your standoffs down, and I'll go ahead and show that. I want to drive a point home here in a second. So you get that in there, and then you've got to hold your finger to push that nut in that little groove right there. Let's see if we can get that in the camera shot. I apologize. You got to get that nut into that deal there, and I think I missed a camera shot here a minute ago, but you want to make sure you don't get this plate upside down, and that you have these notches here at the very top and not upside down, because otherwise you'll have the plate not sitting correctly. Once you get that on, you've got to use your finger to hold these in place so you can tighten them down. Sometimes these will start to spin in the little groove, and that is okay, because these are the standoff themselves, what they look like, and these things snap very easy, and trust me, you can't go to the hardware store, no matter how big, and find this exact same thing. That happened to me a couple years ago when I first seen this style, and I didn't know, why is this thing loose? And on that board, I can't even remember if it was a socket 1155 or 775, I don't remember, but on that board I had gotten, the more I tightened, I really got it pretty close, and so I thought that that was the problem, and I broke one of these off, and it was a nightmare trying to get another one. So do not over tighten these things. You just have to know that this is a little bit loose, and once you and it's like that because they don't want you putting a crap ton of pressure on the motherboard and risk breaking or screwing up the motherboard here. So it's loose right now, but once that plate gets put on and you tighten those screws, this all tightens up. It is not floating loose no more. It's supposed to be like this, and I wish they put that in the directions, because their old school stuff from a few years back, everything was tight. And it didn't jingle like that when you were finished. So use a screwdriver and just kind of tighten them down the best you can. You got to hold your finger from the back side and hold the nut in place, and just kind of give them a good snug hand tighten, but don't overdo it. So then what we've got to do is feed this through here, at least for my setup. And this is my least favorite part, well, one of them, because I just want to be sure that I put this on nice and square. And they recommend, I think, that you go ahead and put your pump on first. I'm sorry, your radiator and your fans first, and then get that other guy on there, but that ain't how I roll. I just hold it with one hand so that the hoses are not pulling. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and fight it, and that's not fun. You've got plenty of copper heat block on the pump that you don't have to worry like if it's exactly centered. I try to, just for the you know, the look, the cosmetic look of it, but functionality is nothing to worry about. Alright, there we have it. That part's over. Again, common sense when you're putting those screws on, because I suppose you could just as easily break one of those standoffs screwing this head screw on than you could screwing the standoff on itself. So just a lot of just, you know, common sense. Just be very careful. You know, even when you're careful, stuff happens, and that's the unfortunate side of it. That's why I'm glad when that part is always over. Not a big deal though. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to get some of our screws, because I've got a little bit more length to go through here, and we're going to mount one fan in here, and then we'll use their screws as they intended to put the other fan on the outside here. There we have it. We've got the H80i finally mounted up into our case here, or at least the motherboard tray, which will slide into our case. like I said, this normally would all be inside, and you can see kind of why I've done it this way. These hoses now are stretched straight out instead of having them, you know, well, basically it would be right about in here, and then they'd be bowed out like this, and they get too close to the side of the case fans. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I mounted everything with the H50 and the H60 and now the H80 outside of the case, to get that stretched out and get these cables straightened out. Unfortunately, that, you know, required me to cut a hole in the case, but that is kind of another animal all in itself, because I've had to use washers to space, and I've already put some electrical tape just to kind of seal that off, so it doesn't look too bad. And like I said, nobody goes behind my case anyway to inspect this stuff, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But another thing too is I haven't decided whether I'm going to pull these, you know, pull this extension off of here. I know that if I do plug these directly to my motherboard, you know, this board has the CPU fan and the CPU fan optional. It's got two of them, which I could plug these directly to the motherboard, and that way the motherboard could just kind of have at it if it feels it needs more or less. If I do that, then I won't be able to control the fans through the Corsair link, but I don't know about having all them wires, and it makes me a little bit nervous, at least, you know, trusting some software to run my fans, and I think I'd rather just do straight to the motherboard. So I might pull this off tomorrow. I gotta do some reading up on that. We've got our USB cable right now strung through and coming up to the bottom. That's a USB 2.0. I still need to have one open for the front of my case. I've got two, but I need at least one, and then I'll be using both of these USB 3.0s as well. So it's coming along. We'll tie up these cables here, and I got to throw my graphics card in real quick. Show you the back again. We're just gonna, you know, find some power back here for this guy. This is for the pump. I want to go direct power. I don't want to plug anything into a motherboard on that. I always run my pumps at 100%, so that way they're I don't have to worry about, you know, them slowing down and having some overheating issues. Well, now's my favorite time. I get to open my favorite box. I'm going to go ahead and take the 780 Ti from Gigabyte out. Again, as I stated earlier, there's nothing really special in here. You've got the disc that you don't want to use unless if you live out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have internet. That's the driver disc. They may have the overclocking software in there from Gigabyte. I might use that, but you can also get that from the website, which I usually do. And these guys here, like I said, Molex 2 8-pin, two of them. I don't know why you'd want to use those, but they're there if you need them. We'll set that over here. Always my favorite part is looking at the graphics card. I mean, this is the absolute heart and soul of any gaming PC. You know, this has got the 3-fan design. It's got, get a little bit closer here, it's got the two 8-pins. We have a nice thick heatsink running all across the card. The only thing I wish it was different is that, and I could see the pictures online, but this wind force, I wish this was bent back with here. I'm not sure why that's got to stick out like that. It's kind of weird, but obviously it's not going to cause any problems in the case. They would have thought of that, but this is not the gigahertz edition, so technically I always buy the fastest single GPU card, but this is the second as far as the Nvidia goes, and the gigahertz edition, the only difference is, you know, it has a little bit higher clock from the factory. It's the same card, a little bit higher clock, and then they have the metal, you know, covering that looks a little bit nicer on the back here, but it serves no purpose really as far as the card goes, and you can save yourself $50 and go with this one and overclock it within a couple minutes yourself, and that's kind of what I recommend doing. But if you get a good deal on the gigahertz edition, definitely that'd be a really nice ride to have as well. So I am so excited to get this card in and start making some gaming videos for you guys. Let's go ahead and install it on our board. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull these off. I do run dual monitor, so take both of the plugs off there, and I'll just leave these on, and these HDMI and whatnot. We'll leave those together as well. Now, just so you guys know, one of the concerns I had about these WindForce back a couple years ago when I bought my 580, which again, as I said, I think it was one of the first ones to run this design after the 480 incident and all the overheating. They had to come up with something. But one thing that I was worried about was that, you know, these smaller fans, you know, going out, you know, if you work on computers for any length of time, you'll find out that small fans usually lead to trouble. I don't know why. They must just not be built as heavy as some of the bigger, you know, 120s, 140s, 200s, things like that. Just bigger, better bearings. But I did have one of these after a clean out one time, and a little bit, maybe too much, a little bit too much air pressure. I did have one of these making a little bit of noise on the 580, and I did find out that not only is it very easy to remove these fans, it's just a couple screws and you can unplug them under here. Of course, this model I'm not 100% sure. I know that's how it goes. 580, that's how it was, and you could pop this fan off very easy. I called Gigabyte to send me a fan. They sent me 3 brand new ones, and I think they were there the next day or no later than the day after. I mean, they got there extremely quick. There was no cost to me. All they wanted is my address and you know, my name and my address, and they had them rushed out immediately. I had 3 brand new fans to replace all of them. Well, I didn't know that it was going to go that quick, and I didn't want, and it wasn't a loud noise. It was just a little you know, grinding noise, and again, might have been just from you know, winding it up too much when I was cleaning out. But in the meantime, I didn't want to listen to that noise. I went ahead and used some of my Ballistol, which is a very good lubricant, you know, that I use for all my firearms, and sprayed that in there, and it got very quiet very quick. And you could use any, you know, household lubricant, you know, WD-40 maybe, or a household oil would be probably fine. This isn't too high-tech. But I oiled that fan up, put it back in, and it's been running 6 months and several clean-outs, spin up, everything, going forward, backward. Never another noise out of that fan ever again, and it's still in there, still working to this day, and as quiet as can be. So not really sure, you know, and if it ever goes out, I've got 3 brand new fans to pop in. So don't let this deter you if you're like me, worrying about the, you know, the quality of these fans. I think they're very good, but I think you know, like, again, you want to use common sense, and sometimes I will admit I'm a little bit hard on these when I clean out, because I really want to force air in and really get that out. And I've always assumed that these fans weren't terribly expensive, but when I had one making noise, it did worry me just a little bit that you know, I might be up a creek without a paddle. So we'll go ahead and drop this onto our board. And this is going to actually use the very top slot. I used to have, which we don't need anymore, but my top slot here on the motherboard was always where my doohickey, my switch for my one blue fan, because remember I did a push-pull on the H60, which originally had 1 fan. I had 2, and so this guy used to sit in here, so I guess it kind of works out. Not that we couldn't easily move that to another slot, which we would have done, but it's the first card that I know of that has sat up this high, so that's kind of cool. We'll go ahead and put that on, and we'll be good to go. I'm gonna probably stop the progress here for the day. I got some things that I want to research, and I want to check out just a little bit more about that Corsair link, and then I'll be back tomorrow to put this whole unit inside of the case, get our power supply hooked up, and do our super fun cable management that I'm hoping is not half as bad, seeing that it is a modular power supply, and we'll just kind of pick up from there. Oh, and one big happy fun thing that we totally left out here that I'll go ahead and do real quick is put our RAM modules in. Look at that, I'm almost dropping them out of the box here. Here is our 2 beauties right here. These are 2133 megahertz, so these are really going to be nice if I want to do some of those big overclocks. But we'll go ahead and snap these in. And thankfully, they are going to be going in. away from those hoses, as I said before, and clip them in. RAM is the easiest thing there is to install, so can't really go wrong there. So we'll go ahead and get these cables just tucked in there for now. So that's our beauty. That's going to be our new gaming rig, minus these cables that are flopping around for the fan. And I'll get this in the view here. I apologize. It's really hard to, with my current setup, to be trying to get all this into the video. I don't have much space here on the bench to work with, but you guys can see there, I'm really excited about the performance that I'll get out of this machine, and it should do me fine for the next 2 years until it's time to build again. Alright, we're back at it again today. I wanted to stop yesterday. I wanted to do a little bit more research on our Corsair RM1000. Basically, I just had a few questions myself about the Corsair link. I knew that this had it built in. I just didn't know if it was something I really wanted to hook up. I know you don't have to, and found out that yes, it is something that I do want to hook up, because going back to this fan, you can have it adjust. It's by default, this fan will not spin until there's 40% load on this power supply, which on 1000 watt, it could be quite a bit, and I don't even know where I'm going to come in. And that's one of the other things, is the C-Link, Corsair link, will actually tell you, let you know what you're using, all your voltages, and what every rail is doing, and things like that. So, and I want to adjust that fan to come on at probably 20% load, and depending on the noise, maybe even come on, stay on all the time, just at a very low RPM. So I do like this, especially in my setup. Now, if you had this into a bottom mount situation, I don't think it wouldn't matter, because it's only going to be drawing air from outside the case and blowing it outside the case. But since this is a little bit more the old school setup, where it's top mounted, up here, it is another fan. I mean, that's another 130, well, this is a 140 millimeter fan right there, that is helping draw even more air out and blow it out. And of course, the reason that they switched that around in the first place is so that you weren't taking hot air from the case and blowing it through your power supply. And in a lot of cases back in the day, definitely had more heat issues. But I can guarantee you, even with the style of graphics card that I've got here, with the 780 Ti and the WindForce, this case does not have hot air in it. There is so much air moving around in this thing with all these fans going. And like I said before, it runs relatively quiet. This thing, speaking of quiet, has a lot of technology built in, with all of their coil wind and all that. They've got the coils in here are really taped off, so it's just supposed to eliminate a ton of the noise that a lot of power supplies make, with the high pitch noises and squealing and all that sort of thing. And not that I've had that problem with my other ones. Usually anytime you buy a decent power supply, you're not going to have that issue. Anyway, look at this. Comes with a bag of goodies, and powered by Corsair. A nice, that's like one of those thick kind of aluminum stickers. So pretty stoked about that. Kind of a sticker geek. I used to, like I said, didn't even put them on, but lately I have been. And we got some screws, and then they gave us some more zip ties, which, hey, I'll take them, I'll use them. So this is a said cable here that I had questions on, and basically it plugs into a USB 2.0 port, which on this old case here I wanted to use one of them, but that's alright. We're going to have USB 3.0s, and we got lots of USBs in the back, but this thing goes down, and this is actually right here. This end is what plugs into the power supply on the back, and it runs down to a 3-pin and a 2-pin. And basically, what that will then plug into is either this adapter right here that goes USB 2.0, or it would go into the Corsair cooling node, I think they call it. And that's another separate device, which I briefly only looked into. And I think it'd be pretty neat. You could plug the H80i pump or whatnot in, but I really don't want to get into all that, and I think I'd rather just plug it into the motherboard and run it from there. So in my setup here, first things first, we're going to go ahead and mount my aluminum plate onto the front of the power supply here, and then we'll be able to slide the whole unit in. And that's to one of the only disadvantages I can see here also is this a little bit harder to get to the back of the power supply to plug things in, but I've got plenty of access under here and around here. But in a newer style case where this thing was in the wide open, like sitting on the bottom of a case, it would be a lot easier. Well, we've got our power supply mounted in place, and now it is time to take our little tray of badness here and slide it in our case. Just have to watch out for some of the cables hanging out in the back here. And there we have it. We're finally home, and then I can lock it into place. There's these two locking clips here, and this one already clamped shut. So we're good to go. Looks like we'll be able to kind of tidy that up. I went ahead and ran the where the fan connectors connect into the Y. I went ahead and ran some electrical tape because there was some wires you could see, and I just didn't want to have any issues back here with that. So we've got our pump power right here, so we're going to have to definitely run some power leads back there anyway. So that's what we're looking at now. I have to get this cable plugged into the power supply and run that down and under and plug it into our USB 2.0 slot. Well, I went ahead and got all my cables for the reset power button, hard drive LED, got all those hooked up down there. I do have both of these 120 fans in the bottom here that are going to be plugged in directly to the motherboard, just because they're not really that important. They're just kind of there to help breathe some air up onto the graphics card here, and they are already going at 100%. They're not extremely high performance fans. They're Kingwin long life fans, so they last forever, and they blow a decent amount of air, and they're pretty quiet. So we got that going, and I ran my cable for the Corsair link for the power supply down and got both of the pump and that hooked into the USB 2.0. Got my USB 3.0 for the front hooked up and have it running in this tubing over here. And now I'm ready to install my hard drives again. This will be the bay that sits actually on top up here. Of course it'll go the other way around. With the 120 that's blowing directly. It's one thing I really like about this setup. I'm not so crazy about having a 120mm fan still, but these are fairly quiet. They're extremely high performance. If I were to turn them up, they would really blow a lot of air, and they of course be a little bit noisier, but they're a Thermaltake, and I've had them for a few years now, but I've got them on here, and they blow such a good amount of air, and 100% of the air that they blow is forced down this box where the hard drives sit, and it just blows so much air. I mean, the hard drives are literally sitting just maybe half an inch away from the blades there. So, and then the only thing that's in front of that is the front of the case here, which you can see through these, and those sit right over there like that. So there is just so much direct air blowing on my hard drives. And again, not all that really matters a whole lot anymore for most people if you're running with solid state, but if you're recording and things like that, you're still going to need a big hard drive, and that's where you want to make sure you got some good air on it. So these here, I've got a Western Digital Black 1TB, the 64 meg cache, and it is a 6 gigabyte drive, and then we've got a little bit older Hitachi 1TB that's also storage, and this Western Digital Black runs my Windows 7 right now. Eventually I'll format it and use it for all storage. This one is just random storage that I've had for a while. This is a 32 meg cache drive, and these will kind of share their own bay together, and they won't be producing too much heat or anything like that. And then the bay that sits down here on the bottom, I'm going to have my my Seagate 3 terabyte drive down here, and then on top of it I'm going to have the good old 512 gigabyte solid state, and this is my recording drive that I record all my videos to. So I'll have about what will we have, 5.5 terabytes of space on this PC for now. This summer I'm probably going to be adding another 3 terabyte and upping that, because I'm really using a lot of storage right now. So 5.5 terabytes, and I know I've got at least probably 3 of it full, and got a lot of stuff to move around though too. So this solid state, in order to go into the regular 3.5-inch hard drive bay, takes a plate like this. Get that open, nice and blue. Here's our screws here, and this guy will mount in there pretty much like that. Actually, I'm going to do it the other way because I want it to line up with, yeah, that's how we're going to do it, right there, and we'll screw that down in and slide that in and mount that as well. So we'll have her looking real nice here in a minute. Alright, I went ahead and swapped the hard drive around with the solid state, mainly because I forgot that the solid state in this setup is going to sit back so much farther, and I wanted to be able to use my little cables here with one end straight, which has got to go into the motherboard, and then we've got the the 90 degree here. So it would have been, it would have been like back in here and it just went to work. So now I can go ahead and snap that onto there, and it's a very short little run to the motherboard. I bought these last fall as well. Wanted to have shortest cable that I could get, so I don't have like just a mess of cable all over inside there. And they are round too, which is pretty sweet, because you could do like if your hard drive comes out really close to the board, you can always loop them, things like that. So anyway, got that in there, and then the way this setup works here is we have a right on this side, and then there's up arrow and an R, and the left for the other side. But these kind of sandwich in there like that, so it's all rubber mounted. And let's get a little bit better visual of that there. And basically your screws go right into here, and like I said, the whole apparatus will just end up sliding right back there, and I'll fish my wire right down through there like that. So we'll go ahead and get that little part set up and get these hard drives mounted down, then we can run all of our wires and get this thing up and going. Well, we jumped ahead here and went ahead and got the hard drives installed. You can see them in their little bays right there with the solid state down below. Pretty much ready to go ahead and snap all of my pieces. They're kind of like a filter piece, but part of my case rather, on up here. These go all the way up, and then I'll be able to close this and make that all look nice. Went ahead and got some wires run for my SATA here, and normally I recommend waiting to do SATA cables last, but these ones aren't really in the way too much, so I'm not expecting to have any trouble. But it's just easier to go ahead and put in all your your power leads and stuff before you put your actual SATA cables on a lot of times, because the way that the SATA cables sit out. Got our pump hooked up. Got the pump lead hooked up right here. You're supposed to run there's a SATA cable, you got to run that to power, and then you have this one little wire right here, and that's for the it's just a lead, so the motherboard knows there's something plugged in, there's a pump, and I'm not really sure what else is communicated through that. But other than that, this side here is pretty clean and open. We've got, again, our SATA from the pump. We've got some fan leads. We're going to go ahead and plug this all up and tie it in as tight as we can in the back here, and we'll be good to go. Onto getting it on the bench and firing it up. Alright folks, there you have it. It is finally done. I got all the wiring hooked up. I mean, it's not quite as clean as I wished it would be, but I'm kind of limited with this case, and that's about as good as it's going to get. One of the things about this power supply too, they went with the flat cables, and they're supposed to be just easier to work with, and they kind of are. But I will say that there was definitely some times that I was putting so much pressure on those on all the different connectors, like for the GPU, the motherboard, and even in the back of the power supply. I was pushing so hard I felt like I was going to break something. I've hooked up a lot of power supplies and never felt one that was that stiff. And I know it wasn't the board or the GPU, because I've already plugged other things in. I had to plug one of my cheapos in to test everything out. So it's just something to do with the cables. And as far as bending them, that's, you know, they're kind of stiff on the stiff side, but you know, you also have quite a big profile here, and I think that definitely would probably cut down more on the airflow than a round cable, which I think is what they were actually trying to go for, is that it would just be easier to work with and you'd have less cable exposed. But it's not a fail, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily better than round cables by any means. Kind of on the fence on that one. So other than that, that's about as good as it's going to get. These four fan wires hanging out here go right about here when I put my side on with the 4 140s, and that's where they plug in. And then when you shut the door, all these just fold back into here like this. So that's what that's for right there. But I'll flip it around the other side here. Got the front, got all my my thingies on here. And then the back side. Don't have too many wires hiding back here. I wish we had more, but that's, like I said, about the best you can do, because my sides here they're beveled out a little bit, but not real far. So that's the best you're gonna get. And we've got a few wires running in front of this fan up here. So I'll kind of run with it and see. I know this case, as I said many times, will do the job with the cooling, but I am possibly interested in looking at a bigger cooler. I like the H100, but there's not a big difference over that and the H80. It's not enough to change. But if they come out with I call it the H200, which doesn't exist to my knowledge, but I've made that up. Basically, it would be the H100 2 times thick. So it's the same thickness as the H80, but the actual size, length and all of the H100. And maybe it comes with 2 or 4 fans. If they come out with something like that, I'll jump on in a heartbeat, because even though you're dealing with closed loop cooling here, I think a radiator like that would be pretty darn close to going full on water cooling. And I'm also not ruling that out in the near future, in the next year or two. So I guess what I'm getting at is I might be ditching this case, in the next couple years, and stepping up to something a lot bigger that I could actually do full-on water cooling with. So we'll go ahead and get this on the bench. I know y'all been waiting to see it, and I am too. Trust me. All right, finally got it on the bench here, and this is a moment we've all been waiting for. We'll just go ahead and hit the power button, and if I did everything right, it's going to turn on. Oh wow, we got a lot of noise there. Looks like that's our H80i that's winding up right now. So they normally do that once they've been unplugged. Everything else is looking good. Our fans are going down here. Wow, look at all that green. That's that LED path lighting. What that is that's coming off that the Sound Blaster chip, and it goes right up to the audio jack if you follow it up. Whoop, it's right up there. And you can turn that off. I don't know if I'll leave it on. I'm kind of used to having a nice big blue fan right here, and looks a little dark in my case. But we still got our 4 big fans to go on the side here that are all blue. Our fans wound back down here. Alright, well, looks like we got an attempt to restore our Windows. Right now it just booted off the solid state drive, which I didn't even do a complete Windows 7 install. I was just messing around the other day to make sure that everything was working there. Created a boot record on it, and just checking it out. But this is going to get the Windows 8, and that's the last piece of the puzzle. And I'll have to go out and get the 8.1 and then get update 1 when it comes out next week. So we got this big 140 going up here. Everything seems to be working. Let's see about our front fans here. This is what this case looks like with the side cover on there. Open that up. We got both of those guys going there. It's just unbelievable how much air comes down those tubes. I mean, it just shoves the air right down and across the video card and out. I mean, there's a lot of air coming just from those, and I can really crank them up if I wanted to. That's really all the air you'd need right there, but I wouldn't want to sit and listen to that amount of noise. I keep them turned all the way down, 100% down, low as they go. So anyway, looks like everything's working. I even got my lights. Yeah, hard drive, everything's working. So see if the reset button works. Yep. Some of my wires are all weird in this thing, and on this case I had to change them around. I'll tell you, I've built a lot of computers, and doing building this one and with my setup, it's always the most complicated. And I'm surprised looking back that this is the first case all those years ago I built in. And I can't believe that I did it in like 2 days time back then. Of course it took me that right now, but that's because I took a massive break in the middle and had things I had to do last night. But anyway, got the side cover on. Yeah, look at that, there's green lights behind here too. I might have to, I'm probably gonna go ahead and see about disabling that. I know it's an option in the BIOS, you can turn that green lighting off there, but anyway, I guess we'll slap the other side cover on and have one last look at it. Alright, and there it is. Got the 4 140s on the side there. Very quiet PC. Of course, I've got my old guy over there that's half in pieces. It's making more noise right now than this thing. Very nice and quiet, and I can just feel all the air just moving around in this room. It's the reason I've held on to it for so long, but anyway, we'll go ahead and slide the cover on there, shut that, and that's a done deal right there. Now, just closing thoughts, one of the most important things if you're building your own PC, you definitely, first time you power it on, you definitely want to be paying close attention to making sure, especially if you're using liquid cooling, that your pump's working, you don't have any leaks, that you don't, you know, the fans are working, everything is taken off. You wouldn't want to be really gazing at the fans and seeing whatever else is going on and how pretty things look, because there's a lot that can go wrong in those first few moments. I've already tested all my stuff here well before building with it, and on top of that, like I said, I already went into my BIOS and set up and turned on the alarm, which was disabled by default, as far as you know, if there was any heat issues. You know, I've seen where sometimes you'll think you have the you know, you think you have the heatsink down onto the processor, but it's not, and that processor, without a heatsink touching it, can overheat very, very quickly. So you definitely want to make sure that. I already went in, like I said, a week ago, and I got the board, and I just had it laid out on the wood bench here, and had plugged in my crappy little 600 watt Diablo Tech over here in, and went in and set up the BIOS and all that sort of thing. So that's why I wasn't too worried about it tonight, but definitely very important. You can fry a lot of things. I'm definitely going to have to turn off that green lighting. I don't really like having that shining through the blue. I don't know, it looks kind of weird just in that one corner. But anyway, this will be the rig that brings you all the great content, and we're going to be getting on that real hard here as soon as I wrap up the rest of this build. There'll be part 3 coming out here in just probably the next few days or a week, and that's going to be basically on how to refurbish an old computer and how to get it ready for selling on eBay or Craigslist. I'm going to do Craigslist. I've sold many computers on there, and I'll share a few quick stories about some of the ones that I've almost sent to the dumpster, but decided to refurbish, clean them up, and put them on Craigslist, mainly because of how dirty they were, and made pretty good money on some of them. So don't throw your old stuff away. It's better, in my opinion, to get rid of it while it still works nice, and clean it up, shine it up, and you'll get top dollar. So I do appreciate you guys stopping by again. Sorry if this one was a little bit long, but trying to just show you everything we got going on here. Appreciate you stopping by. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Till next time, take care.